Hey everyone,
Hi,
Deepti
Shrija.
back with sugar and spice. On Story Saturdays, another set of stories, totally different again.
Yes.
So, hope you all enjoy today's stories as well. So, we directly move on to the stories. Over to you, Shrija.
All right, Deepti. So today's story, the one that I've picked out for you, is called The Face on the Wall. A story that I've always loved reading, and maybe this is the first time I'm narrating it to someone, so I hope you enjoy it as well. This story is the author of the story, the writer is E.V. Lucas. So, The Face on the Wall. It begins with the narrator telling us that he and his friends had a bit of an embarrassment the previous evening at their friend, a common friend, Dalney's. So, all these friends had gathered together to spend some time. So, they'd had drinks, they'd had dinner, and after that, a lot by way of conversation, sharing of stories, and the topic had somehow moved on to the usual favorite topic, the supernatural element. So, many of them were talking about the experiences that they'd faced with, things that have no scientific explanation. So, all of them were very interested. It was a fun evening. And as this was going on, there was one person in the group, a small man with a pale face but with very bright eyes, who was observing everybody but wasn't saying anything at all. He was a silent spectator in the group. Now, he was someone who had come in with a friend, so he was a friend's friend, so not really known to the rest of the group. So, while the group shared stories, all the friends they felt it is their duty to ask him to share something as well. So they invited him and said, why don't you tell us a story, something that's happened, or share something on the same lines with us. So the man looked at them and said, well, I've been listening to some fantastic stories today, so I'm sure I have nothing that will compare to what you've been telling, all of you have been sharing this evening, but I might have something to share with you. The only thing is that this is something that actually happened to me. So it started a year ago, and the weird thing is, it just got over or completed. The whole thing completed itself just yesterday afternoon. So this got the interest up of all the people who were listening, and they said, "Come on, tell us what exactly is it that what is the story that you have to share with us." So he says, "Well, this happened sometime maybe a year ago, around a year ago, when I was staying at these lodgings on Great Ormond Street. And this was an old house, so there were a lot of people lodging there. And even though the owner had painted the place and given it to us, still there were a lot of damp patches on the walls. So, this wall near which I slept, the room that I had, um, there was this patch on the wall, near my bed, which strangely resembled a human face. Now, I'm sure we've seen patches on walls. Generally, when there's some kind of damp behind the wall, some kind of leak from somewhere, we usually find these patches on the walls, which are quickly cleaned and covered up by painters. So he says there was one patch like this. There were other patches, and the other patches changed. They grew bigger. They kind of peeled off, but this particular patch somehow remained the same. It just got a little darker and clearer, and very soon I could see a face, a human face. And because that was the time when I fell ill with influenza, I was down for a while, so I could do nothing else but lie on the bed and have my medicines and read. So that every little bit of free time I had, I would look at this wall and look at this face. That face literally started controlling me. I was obsessed with it because I felt I had to find a person who had a face like that. I felt this was some kind of a connection that I had with this. This belonged to a real person. So when I recovered, I started spending all my time hunting for this person. I didn't know if he existed, but I felt I just had to find him. It was some kind of a connection I had with this person. And so I started visiting railway stations or places where there were huge crowds of people, like football matches and restaurants. And all the time, this became something like a mania for me. I was so obsessed with it. It affected my eating, my drinking, and I thought I was going to fail in this, seemingly impossible task. When finally I located him. It was at Piccadilly. I saw him speeding by in a taxi, and it was a face I had looked at every single moment during the day, so I knew exactly what it was, the strange turn of the nose, the eyes, everything. When I saw him going by in a taxi, I jumped into a taxi myself and asked the taxi driver to follow him. I had to follow him. I had to meet him. I had to speak to him. My obsession had reached that level. He got off at Charing Cross, but before I could talk to him, I saw that he met with two ladies and a little girl. And I rushed up to him to speak to him, but there were other people who joined him. They were friends, and they got into a train. So they were going to Folkestone. So I got a ticket to Folkestone, and I got into the train with them, but I didn't find a moment to speak to him. He was surrounded by his friends, people who knew him. They got off at Folkestone, and I realized that they were traveling to Boulogne. So they boarded a ship. I went with him too. I had only fare to go one way, but this had reached a level of, what would you say, I had become so obsessed with the idea of speaking to this person that I didn't think twice. I got a ticket and I boarded the ship. Now I had to find time to speak to him because he disappeared into one of the more expensive, larger cabins. So must have been a rich man. I realized he was a rich man. So I waited. I said there was no way he's going to stay in the cabin all the time. He'll step out. When he does, I'll speak to him. So I waited and I waited. A couple of hours passed by, and finally he emerged with a little girl. This time there was nobody else with him, so I rushed to him. And before I could stop myself, I told him, "Sir, could I have your card, please? There's something very important I'd like to share with you." So he looked at me a little curiously. I'm sure he must have thought I was, slightly mad or had lost it, because he quickly took out the card and gave it to me, and rushed in the opposite direction, presumably running away from this mad person who suddenly comes up and asks for a card. So I took the card and I walked to a corner of the ship. I stood there and looked at it, and what appeared before my eyes came as a shock, because what I saw was Mr. Ormond Wall, and there was some address in America below that. Ormond Wall. It was far too close to what I had been through. Ormond Wall, and this is something I had seen on Great Ormond Street on a wall. So the coincidence was too much. I fainted. I lost it and I fainted. The ship took me to Boulogne, and I was told that I lay there for unwell in bed for almost a month, after which I came back. And the mania began again. I had to find this person. So I realized he was American. So I contacted all the people who I knew who was remotely connected to America. And I got to know of one thing, that he was a millionaire. He was an American millionaire. And he had English parents. So he lived somewhere in London. But where? I didn't have an address, and I just had to get the address. I had to meet this gentleman because I felt there was some kind of connection, some kind of a karmic connection. I didn't know what. But there was no hope. I kept looking and I kept looking until yesterday, when I was sitting. I woke up from my night's disturbed sleep and I sat up, and as usual, I looked at the wall, on the patch on the wall. And when I looked at it, I found that it had dimmed, it had faded out, and there was hardly anything left of that face. And that was something which had been absolutely clear the previous night. So I was shocked. I went close and it was true. There was hardly anything left, just the mere outlines. Depressed because now I didn't have a face to look for, I went out, picked up the paper, and the first thing that appeared on the paper was American millionaire had a terrible accident here when he was motoring in Italy. And it was a picture of the face on the wall. I couldn't believe it. I read the whole thing and I came back and sat down. And when I sat down, I looked up at the wall again, and right in front of me, the face on the wall, the patch, completely disappeared. Later on, I learned that it was around that time that this gentleman had passed away, had passed on. The story stopped there, and the rest of the group, the narrator says, was so lost in the story. They hadn't heard anything like this, and there was discussion and debate, and they were fascinated by the whole thing, and they said, this is really fascinating. And because this was a news that they had all seen too, he had told them, I'm sure you must have read it in the papers yesterday, it was there in the papers, and they knew that this was something that had happened. So they looked at him and they said, what a fabulous story, it's unbelievable, no science can explain this. And all these discussions were happening when the man said, there are three remarkable things about my story. And so they said, yes, do tell us, because now none of their stories matched, to anywhere near the story that he had said was so interesting. So they said, you tell us, what are the three remarkable things? So he said, one, that a face which was a patch on the wall could resemble a gentleman in America, here in London. This happens in London. A patch on the wall resembles a face of a man who's not even in London, who is in America, who happened to be staying here, but he was an American citizen, basically. One. Then the second, what about the second strange thing, you would say, the extraordinary element in your story? So the second thing is the fact that his name should bear such a close, connection to the location where I found this patch. It's like some unknown agency was controlling the whole thing. What is the strange connection? His name was Mr. Ormond Wall, and this was found on Great Ormond Street on a wall near my bed. I mean, that's seemingly impossible. So I really don't know how that could have happened. And the debates continued again after that, and everybody was, discussions, suggestions. How can we explain this? And while all this was going on, one of the friends noticed that this gentleman had got up and was getting ready to leave for the night. So he had almost reached the door. So he stopped him and said, but you haven't told us the third remarkable point in this story, this fantastic story that you've told us. What's the third thing that is very interesting and which, we need to know? So the gentleman turned back and said, the third most interesting thing about this particular story is that I just made this up half an hour ago. Good night, gentlemen. And he left.
Oh my God. I'm sure they would have wanted to beat him up, right?
Oh yes, I bet they looked for him, but I'm sure the friend must have disappeared too, yes? Because
Really?
he took all of them for a ride, but nevertheless, it was a very, very interesting story. So
yes, kept us on the edge whatsoever.
Yes,
But
face
a
of
very,
the
very nice twist at the end.
Yes.
So, yeah. I think many people do this, right? When we have a friends get together.
Oh, definitely.
The prank.
Yes. And especially if you can capture everybody's interest. I mean, they must have felt so
Absolutely.
cheated at the end.
Exactly.
So when you
Yeah.
think of that, that gives you a lot of sadistic pleasure. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah,
So,
it's really nice.
yeah, so that was your story for
Very,
you.
very. No, I haven't heard this story before, so it was really, really interesting for me.
So let's hope the rest, all of you who haven't heard it, or even the ones who liked it before, enjoyed the narration. So we move on now to another lovely story. Over to you, Deepthi.
So today I bring to you a story by Leo Tolstoy. It's a classic. It's called The Three Questions. It's from the collection of short stories by Leo Tolstoy called What Men Live By. Now it's a very, I felt it was a very inspirational, motivational story that I've heard in, recent times. And I'm directly getting on with the story. So once it occurred to a king to find out the answer to three very important questions in life. He thought if he knew the answer to these three questions, he could be, he could not be defeated by anybody, or he would be the happiest person. In every way, he thought, that would be a fulfilling life if he knew the answers to these three questions. Now, these three questions were, what is the right time to do anything? What is the right time? Who are the right people? Who are the people whom you should be with, whom you should always value in life? And thirdly, what is it that you should do to achieve success in life or be happy in life, to live the fruitful life? What is the most important thing to do? Now, as we see, these three questions are very, very vague and general. We cannot find answers to it. But the king thought that if we could find answers to these questions, nothing like it, So he called all his learned men in his kingdom and his counselors, and he sought answers for these questions. A very long time passed by. He kept on trying, but He could not get a satisfactory answer. Some said, you might want to make a table of things you want to do, and then, do it accordingly. You should not while away time. You should consult magicians, some said, because only people who knew what to do, like fortune tellers, such people, you should consult somebody like that. So these were answers which did not satisfy the king. So very, very vague answers he got. But finally, he came to know of a person, a hermit, who lived in the woods. He was known to be a very, very wise person, and heard he heard from people, and he also felt that maybe he was the right person whom I should meet to find answers to these three very important questions. Now, the catch was he would not meet the king, he would only meet a person who was a commoner. So he decided to disguise himself as a common person, and he went to the hermit's hut. A little away from the hut, he dismounted from his horse and he walked up to the hermit's hut. And the hermit was busy digging something in front of his hut, the ground. He was trying to sow some seeds. He was digging with his spade. So when the king went there, he told the hermit that I have come here seeking answers to these three very important questions. What is the right time to do anything? Who are the most important people? And the third question would be, what is the right thing to do? I could not find answer to these questions, but I feel that you can give me the answers to these questions. The hermit looked up at him and did not reply. He continued to do what he was doing. Now, the king saw that this man was very weak and old, and he was breathing heavily as he was digging the ground. And he said, okay, I can lend you a helping hand. Please give me the spade. Let me do it for a while. So the hermit actually gave him the spade and said, thank you. And he was happy that the king was trying to help him. So he dug the ground for over 2 hours. He did the work, and the hermit told him, now you can pass the spade back to me. I have got my rest time. Now I can handle it. But the king said, never mind, I'll do it. And the whole day he did this work for him. And by the end of the day, he couldn't wait any longer. He asked the hermit again, wise man, I have come to you for an answer to these three questions. If you can't give them to me, it's perfectly fine. Please tell me so, and I will leave. The hermit still did not reply. Instead, he said, look, there's someone coming, running. Let's attend to him. Let's see who is it. When they went and saw, it was a bearded man who was holding on to his stomach. And when they went close by, it was bleeding. His stomach was bleeding, and all his clothes were soaked in blood. They immediately took off his clothes, and they had a handkerchief and a towel, and they wrapped the wound with it and attended to him and gave him water, and he almost fainted, but they took good care of him, and by the time it was evening, he was feeling better. The bleeding had stopped and he was feeling better. So they gave him food and he went off to sleep. The next morning, he woke up. The king was also very tired, so he had slept well. When he woke up, he saw that this bearded man was strangely looking, staring at him. And the king said, okay, how are you feeling now? He said, much better. And thank you very much. Please forgive me, he says. So the king asks, oh, but why are you asking me for forgiveness? You have not done anything to me. He said, I don't know you. So he says, you don't know me, but I know you. I am that enemy of yours who had wanted to take revenge for You had executed my brother and seized our land. I wanted to take revenge on you, and I waited because I knew that you were coming to meet the hermit. When you went inside the hut and you did not return, I came out of my hiding and I followed you. Your bodyguards recognized me and attacked me. I tried to escape from them and I was running, but they had already managed to attack me and I was bleeding profusely. Had you not mended, helped me and attended to me, I would not have survived. I tried to kill you, but you saved my life. I am always thankful to you for that. So the king was surprised and he was happy that he could make peace with his enemy in such a nice way. So he said, never mind, I'm really happy that this happened and I forgive you for what you have done. And I'm so happy that I could make peace with you. I will send you my personal physician to attend to you and you will be fine. Now, this was a very, very a surprising incident which he had not expected would happen at all. But the back of his mind, he had these 3 questions lingering. He had not got the answers yet. But he thought, okay, now there's no point in staying any longer. I think I should leave. So he goes and takes leave of the hermit and he says, oh wise man, I have come to you for the answer to these questions, but I have not got them yet. So I decide to leave. The hermit says, you have got your answers. So, have I? When did you tell me? Said, don't you see? When you came in, if you had not decided to help me and you had decided to go away, that man would have attacked you. If at that time I was the most important person to you, and that time when you were digging the ground was the most important time, and to help me was your business, that was the most important thing to do at that time. When the man came running, for him, you were the most important person. When you helped him, that was the most important thing to do. And the time when you helped him, you attended to his wound, was the most precious time in his life, for otherwise he would not have been alive today to make peace with you. Don't you see? The most important time for anybody is now, because now is the only time that you have in your hands to do anything that you want to do. The most important person is the person whom you are with right now, because you don't know whether you are going to meet another person. And the right time is the most important thing to do. The right time and the right person is your present. So this makes the king very, very happy, and he is enlightened by this new knowledge that he has got. This is a beautiful story by Leo Tolstoy, which I feel is a very inspirational and motivational, and I'm sure that we all have a lot to learn from this.
Definitely. So Deepti, the time right now that we are sitting together is the
This
most
is the time.
important time, yes.
Exactly.
And the fact that we are telling you these stories and you're listening to us, that is also important, because we don't know what's going to happen even a second later. Beautiful story, and so
even
truly
this, I
inspirational.
think this time of the pandemic has taught us a lot to live in the present.
Definitely.
Yes, and it's not that we can't, we won't plan for the future. That's not possible. But I think people all over the world have realized the importance of family and the importance of living in the moment.
Yes. True, absolutely.
So I hope you all like the story.
Yes.
Both the stories. It was a totally different genre. I'm sure it took you to totally different worlds.
Yes.
And until we come up with the next set of stories, it's bye-bye from...
And before I say bye, do send us your feedback, your
yes.
suggestions, all those things hold. And we expect that every time you can tell us, share, and even if you have suggestions as to what kind of stories you'd like to hear, do let us.
Absolutely. That would make us grow, and it would help us bring to you stories that you like to hear.
And have more fun together.
Absolutely.
So bye from Shrija and
Deepti.
from
Bye-bye.
Sugar and
Spice.
Spice. Bye.
See you.